Well, next I would like to invite on the stage is Nitin. He's the CEO of PayU, and he would be talking about the lessons that he learned in building PayU. Thank you so much.
Ashish pulls out the deck, which I somehow scrambled to put together yesterday night. You'll find some typos in there, which he's correcting. Uh, I think he's corrected them now. I think, can you help me pull the deck here? Ashish, cool. So if you still find some typos, just ignore those. Uh, Today we'll be talking about very quickly who is PayU, who are we, where do we stand in terms of scale, so what have we achieved the last 3 years of a journey, and what are the lessons that we learned along the way. PayU is actually, we have two brands or two product lines. One is PayU and one is PayU Money. PayU is actually a B2B brand which caters only to enterprise merchants. So we help large merchants collect payments or accept payments from their customers very, very efficiently. So we help a Book My Show or a Clear Trip or a Freecharge or a Snapdeal or a Jabong do that very, very effectively. That's our PayU brand, which is catering to enterprise merchants. PayU Money, in turn, caters to two segments. PayU Money is our consumer brand. At one end, it caters to a relatively small merchant. It helps that small merchant collect payments from its customers in a fashion which is affordable and convenient. This is different from the offering that we have for the enterprise merchants. So what we realize that for a small merchant, it is very important that things be extremely convenient, so they can operate with even a savings bank account, and things be extremely affordable, so there is no upfront cost, and they don't even need things like a website to collect payment from their customers. So that's the small merchant side or the long tail merchant side. And on the other side, we have the consumer side, where we tell a consumer that you can pay by PayU Money, and your transaction or your payment will be more safer, more convenient, and more rewarding. By safer, I mean that, many times when we are buying from a relatively unknown website, we are scared. Hey, will I get the product? Will I get the services that has been promised? So PayU Money steps in there and makes a guarantee that you'll either get the promised product or service, or you'll get your money back. That's what I mean by safer. By convenient, I mean the transaction becoming faster, easier for you. And rewarding means that you get something out of the transaction, just like you get reward points on your credit card when you pay. So these are domains where we operate. Now let's have a quick look of how we have scaled. We actually launched our operations in October 2011, so we celebrated our 3-year anniversary just 2 months back. Of course, the first year scale up from 2011 to 2012, 13 is kind of straightforward. Everybody would see something like these numbers, 11x scale. We again scaled well in the next year. We scaled something like 15x that year. And then from last year to this year, we are expecting to scale by a factor of 4x. As of now, we have about 50,000 plus merchants. So if you look at the standees outside of PayU Money, it will say 48,000 merchants. That's roughly a week and a half old standee. So today we are adding about 5,000 merchants per month. And we think that we'll do more than 7,000 merchants by the end of this financial year, which is March 2015. Now, let's compare it with the market overall, where merchants are collecting payments online. We compete with players who have been around in the market for about 13, 14 years. You take every player in the market, put them together, they'll not have half these merchants. So we have really, really scaled well when it comes to the merchant side of things. This is the TPV that we process. So TPV means total processed volume, which is the total value of transactions going via our system. Since we are Naspers group, we cannot give out actual numbers. But on the y-axis, the y-axis is actually in USD billions. So this graph is actually in USD billions. So this will again give you a sense that between last year and this year, we are scaling by a factor of 2.5x. And we are not scaling on a small base. It's a fairly good base. The same story is reflected again in terms of transactions. Of course, the first year scaling up by 30x, 40x is something which is not hard for anyone. What's interesting is we scaling by a factor of 3x from last year to this year. And today I can talk about this, that we now consistently do more than 500,000 transactions every day. So this scale is substantial, and in 3 years this took a lot of effort to get to this point. Today, if you go to any e-commerce merchant, there is a 70% probability that they will be using PayU. 70 of the top 100 e-commerce merchants use PayU, and these are some examples of those merchants. Now, this is all I'm saying, right? It's very difficult to believe, since I'm the co-founder of PayU, I'll always talk good about PayU. So we also have a third data metric here. How many have heard of Alexa? Great. How many have heard of SimilarWeb? Okay. SimilarWeb is, in my opinion, a much more stronger tool than Alexa. It is like Alexa, but it is more accurate in terms of data representation. Now, they have recently launched their mobile traffic version, which is in beta, but the desktop traffic measurement is fairly good, particularly for India. And what happens is, in case of a payment gateway, whenever a transaction is happening, it goes via the payment gateway URL. So let's say you're buying something from a website, you enter your card details, you press pay now. The payment gateway website will be shown for a few microseconds before that gets redirected to the bank page. So the traffic measure of a payment gateway core website is a very good measure of the number of transactions that website does. So here on Alexa, I basically entered PayU and 3 more competition. You can use your own, you can go to SimilarWeb and do a similar analysis yourself, putting in any competition name. I just distribute those competitors to the e-commerce space. And we have 47% of the traffic for the month of October, which indicates the kind of market share that we have. I hope this impressed you in terms of the scale that we have. Now I come to the lessons that we learned while we scaled in the last 3 years, and we went from nothing, zero, to these kind of numbers. First, so as I said, we operate in 3 business lines: the enterprise business, the small medium business or the long tail merchant business, and the consumer business. I'll just focus on the first 2 part of businesses, which are more B2B in nature in terms of what we learned as we scaled. So let's first see the learnings from the enterprise business. Now, when we launched the product in October 2011, the first thing that we actually went and did was we went to about half a dozen e-commerce companies who were doing well at that point in time, and we simply asked them, what's your pain point? And everybody had the same answer. They wanted higher conversion rate, which basically means that if a customer is trying to pay, they want the transaction to succeed, and they wanted better service from their B2B payment partner or their vendor. And we realized that these are 2 things that we should offer. So 3 years ago, we offered that as a differentiating factor, and this differentiating factor hasn't changed for us in the last 3 years. Our pitch is still the same. Hey, we offer better conversion rates. At that point in time, it was all about web. Today, it's all about mobile. And we offer an extremely good service. We resolve your problems immediately. However, these 2 things are not easy to deliver as you scale. So let's take the first one, higher conversion rates. Higher conversion rates for a payment gateway basically means 3 things. A, you want that the transaction succeed. B, you want that transaction should be faster. C, you want, if for some reason the transaction doesn't succeed, the user understands why it didn't succeed, the merchant understands why it didn't succeed. And at the merchant end, there are different teams. The operations team will see it in a different way, the product team will see it in a different way, and the top management team want an overall view as to what happened. So you have to cater to these 3 things. Catering to these 3 things means that you have to create relevant features, to do innovations, create relevant things for your customers, both on web and mobile, which caters to their needs. Now, what happens when you create a beautiful feature for your customer? And all of us have suffered through this. Competition goes and copies it. They'll just, you launch that feature, you'll create a differentiation, you'll have a few month head start, and competition will say, hey, I have the same feature. So what do? If your core proposition is that my conversion rates are better, you keep innovating. You keep launching more features, you keep understanding what's the core problem, and you keep innovating. However, innovation is easier said than done. I believe the core to innovation is to experiment. So you have an idea, unless you try it out, you'll not know whether it works or not. So you have to experiment a lot. And this is where our first learning came in. If you are the innovation leader, technology innovation leader in your space, by default, you have to spend much more on engineering than the person who is just copying you or who is relatively the number 2 player in the innovation space. Which means you cannot really optimize your engineering. Your engineering cost, resources, cost of engineering typically will be about 50% higher than competition. But that's the easier part, relatively. The harder part is getting the culture right. You want to support a culture which is okay with experimentation. As a B2B company, you'll always have deadlines, things to commit to customers. You are scaling, so you have to scale 10 other things. Along with that, creating a culture where you allow enough experiments is very, very important. And getting that piece right is the harder job. So this is the first lesson we learned, that our organization has to support experiments, and we cannot be really efficient about our engineering because we have to allow for failed experiments. At the same time, we have to fail fast. There is no choice around it. If something is not working, let's move on, let's record that, let's shelve it. So this was our first learning as we tried to cater on our first value proposition, which was delivering higher conversion rates. This is an example of some innovation that we did recently. So most of us would have paid for an online transaction using mobile, right? How many have paid online using a mobile? A show of hands? Cool, a lot of you, right? And it's really pain to enter that password when you go to the bank's page. So what we did was we added this small thing at the bottom. When you reach the bank's 3D secure page or the password page, this bottom thing that you see has been added by us. And the user can choose, does he want to enter a password, or does he want the one-time password to be SMSed? If he chooses the password, we then zoom in into the password window and he can type in. But the more interesting flow is when he chooses for SMS OTP. When he chooses for SMS OTP, we request the OTP on his behalf without he leaving the screen. Then we wait for the OTP. Now, if it's an Android app, he gets the OTP in his SMS app. We automatically read that OTP and show him right there. And because this just simplifies the experience a lot. And then he just clicks on approve OTP and the transaction is done. So basically on Android applications, we have reduced the whole idea of entering a password to 2 taps. First tap for SMS OTP and second tap to approve that OTP. A simple innovation which we expect the competition to copy, but something nice that I want to talk about. Now let's come to our second offering, which is high quality service. What does it exactly mean? It means that you resolve all problems of the merchant, since I'm talking about B2B here, resolve all problems of the merchant immediately to his satisfaction, irrespective of how complex the query is. All of you would have made, you would have used vendors, or you will be customer of someone. And your problem is unique. And when you call that other person, you want that other person to completely understand your problem, irrespective of how complex it is, and immediately resolve it. That's the expectation that every customer has. And when you go to the B2B space, this expectation actually only becomes higher, it becomes bigger. Now you have to cater to it. When you are a small company, then you yourself are picking up the phone. And since you know everything, you are the best guy to solve that problem, and you mostly succeed in solving that problem. But when you grow and scale, and today we are 350 people, how do you make sure that same thing happens all the time? Which means to make it happen all the time, you ideally need very high quality resources who step in every time a customer has a query. Now, in general, when you think about customer servicing, we think about low cost resources. I'm just saying exactly the opposite. What you need is very high quality resources, people from IIT and IIMs who step in and who resolve your query. However, the problem is customer does not want to pay for this premium service. They want it as a hygiene factor. They're giving you that business, that's enough. They'll not pay a premium for this service. So if you just kept hiring so expensive people, your cost structure is not sustainable. So how do you deliver a very high quality of service when the customer is not willing to pay a premium for it? This is where our second lesson came into picture. To create a high quality servicing team in a sustainable fashion at scale in B2B means 3 things. First, everybody in the firm is a servicing guy. Sales, operations, engineering, everybody. If a customer calls, you become a servicing guy. Second, everybody is equipped to handle customer calls. Now, this is the harder part. So let's say it's a technical query. It's a product query which needs analytics, right? People with the relevant skill set can solve for that problem. What do you do if a sales guy picks up a call and the guy in front of says, my transaction is failing, analyze it. You create tools for them. You can't do that day one. But as you start scaling, you create tools which your team internally can use to answer the questions of the customer. So you automate the queries that the customer has. Irrespective of how complex that query is, a relevant tool can be created. Because at the end of the day, even for an engineer or an analytics guy to solve that problem, he'll be running a set of queries. He'll be following a certain pattern. You can code up that pattern, you can create that tool, you can automate that process. This is the second piece, where you enable anybody to answer the question. The third piece, which is the ideal scenario, is you give this tool, this reporting, this analytics to the customer so that he becomes self-sufficient. This is the harder part, but once your team is ready for it, they guide the customer every time. Hey, this is how you can solve the problem. And then the customer themselves realize that they're faster if they do it by themselves than calling someone else, because that guy also has to log in and do the needful. So this is our second lesson that we learned on how to create a high-quality servicing team in a sustainable fashion for B2B. And I'm taking an example here. Now, one of the things that we face very often, and I'm taking an example of net banking here, when you're paying by net banking, is that you face a downtime. The bank is down, and the transaction cannot go through. Earlier, what used to happen, the customer would blame the merchant, and then merchant would blame the payment gateway. We just changed that. We changed that in 3 ways. First, we tell the customer upfront, hey, this bank seems to be down. Do you want to try a different means of payment? And we do that not only for net banking, we also do that in case of credit cards and debit cards. So when you enter your card, we know this card belongs to this bank, and if for some reason that bank as an issuer is down, we identify it and we report it back to the customer. So here we solve the problem for the customer. The customer no more blames the bank. The customer no more blames the merchant. However, the merchant's conversion rate will drop a bit. So now he wants to know what went wrong. So we report him back into the, so we have a beautiful panel, Munchard dashboard. There in the dashboard, he can log in and see downtime notification. So which bank was down for how much time, when it happened, how it happened, etc. Now this is a great report for somebody who's in operations or in product. The top management will actually see all the numbers next day. There is a midnight report that gets generated for most of the top management. They look at numbers and say, hey, my conversion rate is down by 3% as compared to last week, or 2% as compared to yesterday. So now they need that explanation for that 2%. So we went and created something called a diagnostic tool, where actually you can enter any 2 reference periods, and between those 2 periods, we explain why the conversion rates are different. And we explain 0.1% is contributed by this bank, 0.3% positively by this, minus 0.4% by this, so that you know exactly what went wrong in that 2%. And first of all, this report was actually built by the analytics team for the larger analytics team consumption. Then we took it for the entire PayU consumption. It was not in a great looking shape, but it would be consumed internally. And then eventually we rolled it out to the merchant. So we followed those 3 steps in a very, very methodical way, and it worked beautifully for us. So those were some of the key learnings from our enterprise business. Now let's see some of the key learnings from our PayU Money small merchant business or the long tail business. Now PayU Money, you might have seen while coming on seeing on the standees, that's a free product. There is no set of fees, there is no upfront fees involved. Actually, there is no fees, but a transaction fee. The best part, the transaction fee is only 2%. So it's really, really low. And third, the merchant doesn't have to do any paperwork. He doesn't even need to have a website to go live. We actually give him a lot of free tools like email invoicing or free web store, and there are a dozen others to help him to go live. Now, when you do something like this, what basically happens that merchants love the product. They want to enroll in it. You go live immediately like this. Now, that's where the problem comes in. On our enterprise business side, when we have to take a merchant live, there is cost involved, cost of sales, cost of the onboarding team. That cost is roughly $150, about 9,000 to 10,000 rupees. Now, if we spent $150 to onboard every merchant on PayUmoney as well, we would have almost gone bankrupt. We have 50,000 merchants, close to 45,000 of them are small merchants. And if we spend $150 multiplied by 45,000, we would have spent $7 million in just doing sales and onboarding. Clearly unsustainable, not possible to do. So what do? You optimize. And you convert your sales operations of PayUmoney into actual operations. And then, this is where a third learning came into being. When you are scaling operations, it's all about processes. You take a flow, you break it down into parts, and you make it efficient. So you first set a process, and you make it efficient. And as you scale to the next level, you break that process further, and you make it efficient. You keep doing this unless you have an assembly line. You need to literally have an assembly line. You remember those famous words by Henry Ford way back in earlier 20th century? I can give you every color on your Ford as long as it is black. He created an assembly line. Before that, the cars were manufactured in a custom mode. One guy or four guys got together and made a car. He created an assembly line out of it, and because he created an assembly line out of it, he brought down the manufacturing cost of a car. You do the same thing with a process. That's step one. Step two, the biggest cost in operations is the time spent by the employee when executing that step. So you remove a step if you can. So in an enterprise business, we have a set of fees. We have TDR and there are different plans. So there's negotiation going on with the merchant, which wastes a lot of time. On PayUmoney side, there is no negotiation possible. We removed the need for a set of fees, no upfront fees, just one TDR, no negotiation TDR. So that step disappeared. And so forth. So you go through the entire thing and you see which step you can get rid of if you can. The second thing that you do is automate. There is no substitution for automation. So this was the third learning, that when you're scaling operations, it's first all about building a process that runs like an assembly line. And second, you remove steps and you automate everything else. Now another lesson which is very important, which we scaled, is the importance of financial processes and controls. This is not relevant if you are 10, 12 person team. But as you start scaling up into 50, 60 member team, the need for financial processes and controls become extremely, extremely important. How many of you have heard the case of Subiksha? It was a retail chain selling FMCG goods. Some of you have, right? Go read up on that. They raised a lot of money, but the place where they opened a lot of outlets, and then they just called for bankruptcy a few months later. The place where they failed at the core was financial processes and controls. So as soon as you start scaling up, have an experienced finance team. Now, experience is very, very important because in finance, it's also a lot about compliance. You need to have been there, done that, or at least in small parts of it to get a real feel of it. In engineering, in product, in business, in sales, in BD, you keep figuring it out. In finance, I personally feel that an experienced finance team is very important to help you scale. You need to complete all your financial reporting and all your compliances ideally every month. And this will be very, very important for you to scale because if you don't do this, the probability of fall increases. And if you fall, that fall can result in huge reputation loss or even irrecoverable losses in the business like it happened in the case of Subiksha. That's it. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin.
Sure.
Do we have any questions?
So, you will yourself get a feel that you didn't close the month, you didn't know the revenue, the margin, the P&L statement, the cash flow statement, you missed a TDS filing. You'll yourself get to know that those things have started to happen. Hire the team then. As soon as you start missing out on things, see, you cannot do that day one, it's a cost. But as soon as you start missing out on things and you realize that, get a team in place, get a dedicated guy in place if your vision is to scale very fast. Yes, please. Come again?
Everybody, because of the fact that of entering the PIN and ODP and stuff like that, every merchant is going towards a wallet, introducing that closed wallet. I'm saying your transaction numbers that you have shown.
No, so they'll keep on increasing, right? So there are two things there. First, overall, the volume is increasing in a huge way. Only a part of the transactions will be closed wallet transactions, where people load in the money and they transact within that website. It will be very, very tiny if you think about it, because not many people will load the wallet. Typically, funding of a closed wallet happens via refunds. So 3 to 4% of the transaction gets refunded, and that's the source of funding of that wallet. So all that gets impacted is 3 to 4% of the transaction that could have again happened, not more than that.
Do we have any more questions? Yes, we have one person over here.
You mentioned that initially, I mean, you were competing with competitors which were at least in 15, 13 years in this industry. I just want to understand initially, like, what was the thought behind getting into this industry in the first place, and what was the investor reaction to that whole thing? Because it's already kind of a lot of competitors, very crowded space from the start.
So when I got into the payment space, which was in 2011, so I joined Naspers in June 2011, I basically took a step back and thought, hey, what are the billion-dollar companies in internet space and the transaction space? So if you think about it, whenever internet starts in any geography, in any country, in any economy, typically you see first a classifieds company becoming a billion-dollar company. A buyer and a seller comes online, but they do the transaction offline. It may be vertical classified like Naukri or general classifieds like OLX. But if you look at Craigslist and other examples across the world, the first billion-dollar company actually happens in the classified space. The second billion-dollar company that happens is in the travel space. So when people are online, they want to buy things online. And travel, because of changing prices, high ticket size, seems like the right choice, the right first thing where people go and pay online. So you see then travel taking off and companies in travel becoming worth billions of dollars. Look at Priceline or C-Trip or Make My Trip. Examples are there which are worth billions of dollars. Now people, when they're buying travel, they want to buy more things, particularly e-tailing. That's when e-tailing takes off. And you see companies like Amazon and eBay and Flipkart and Rakuten becoming worth billions of dollars. Now as more people start paying online, they realize that, hey, they want to pay for everything probably electronically. It's more convenient. And then payments start to transform. Consumer payments more so. And then you say a billion-dollar company emerging in the world of payments. So if you look at PayPal or Pay by Amazon or again Alipay, these are examples. So in 2011, I could see that classifieds have happened. I could see that travel has happened. I could see that e-commerce is happening. And I thought, what is the next thing which I should bet on? And it seemed like payment is going to be the next big thing. Now, how in payments, what exactly in payments was a big question then. This seemed like the right way to start, and that's how it started. Yeah.
You spoke about experimenting a lot with engineering. I was wondering how that was set up. Do you have like everybody looking at it or a certain wing looking at it?
So, see, it's about the culture. And as a culture, if you say, hey, it's okay to do mistakes, as a culture you say, hey, let's put enough time in trying out new ideas. If you encourage new ideas, it just falls into place. You cannot have two different teams, one who does experiments and one who looks at scaling up or whatever. It's a culture overall. So you say, hey, as an organization, I cannot say that I want to be extremely efficient I cannot create an assembly line in engineering. Some people do, and that's an okay thing to do. But then you're not the innovation leader. You are just using technology as an enabler, not as a tool for innovation. If you're using technology as a tool for innovation, then it becomes a part of your culture, where you encourage new ideas, you debate them, you discuss them, you implement them. If it works, great, you scale it up. If it doesn't, you shelve them. And that's where failing fast comes into picture. But it's a more thing about the culture than anything else. Cool.
We just have one last question.
Are you guys from school? Because the five of you are wearing a jacket and a tie.
So like,
cool.
So like you gave us the name of the companies, eBay, Flipkart and all those. On what base do you decide the commission that you take from them, or is it same for all the companies?
So the beautiful thing about B2B, so when you're talking about a lot of merchants in the long tail, you have a flat pricing. But on the enterprise side, uh, if you look at any, so let's say you get into a negotiation with Microsoft and you're a large firm, right? They will, or you, Oracle or any of these large B2B companies, they will find the right price for you. It's a function of negotiation. So as you as a vendor want to maximize the revenue that you can get from them, and they are willing to pay a price for what they are getting. They know what they want to pay, we know what we want. And they just match. That always happens in negotiation. That's a successful negotiation. So B2B, when you're doing something like this, particularly with large customers, it's all about that negotiation. It cannot be. Until unless you have a standardized product, which is pay you money. But everywhere else,